Hey, so just a quick disclaimer, this was supposed to come out before the end of 2023, but obviously that didn't happen. Whoops! Anyway, enjoy the video. When I was little, I remember reading an article in some weekly school magazine that a crazy low percentage of people actually complete the video games that they buy. That concept was pretty insane to me at the time because I was someone that sunk hours into games pretty much every day and completed games that I owned multiple times. So hearing that there were so many people that not only were buying games, but were just straight up not completing them or sometimes not even starting them, just sounded like pure fiction. Well, that theory lasted up until I became an adult with some disposable income to spend on video games and also found the existence of the Steam sale. Video games that were dozens, if not hundreds or hours long, going on sale for a handful of dollars. But while a lot of us have the cash to spend a few coins on a game that came out 5 years ago, that doesn't mean we have the time or the drive. I'm no stranger to that. So a few years ago, I started an annual tradition that I want to start back up now that I'm trying to get the channel moving again. At the end of the year, I go into my Steam library and go through all the games that I own that I've never played and have to play an hour of them for a first impression. The rules are as follows. I play an hour of the game and the hour starts when I get direct control, so I don't lose 30 minutes on a long-winded JRPG intro cutscene. It has to be a game I have never played. If there's any time on it, even a minute, it doesn't count. And then once I'm done, I decide if there's enough interest to keep playing or not. I used to say that meant I'd stream it in the coming year, but we'll see if I keep to that or not. Also, bear in mind that these mini reviews are just first impressions, so if something isn't lore accurate, don't lose your mind. I'm going off what I personally experienced here. So with all that said, let's take a look at this year's list. How many games do we have to play this year? Whew. Alright, well I could have finished a third of these games in the time it took to do this video, or at least 10% of Baldur's Gate 3. Supergiant Games is a studio that I've always been interested in, but until now my experience with them has been strictly confined to Hades, their hit 2018 roguelike. Still, their games have always come highly recommended from my peers, so when their entire catalog went on sale at some point, I decided to just scoop it up. So if you're wondering why a quarter of the games on this list are all isometric games with amazing soundtracks, interesting stories, and incredibly sexy sounding voice actors, that's why. Bastion's an isometric action game that takes place in a world that lives on floating platforms in the sky. You wake up one day as the Kid, someone that survived some sort of collapse of the world where monsters now roam freely and everyone else has already died and turned to stone or gone to hiding somewhere, hoping that they won't be the next victims of a monster attack. The Kid decides to do something about all this by making his way to a place called the Bastion, a safe haven that he can slowly build up with giant crystal core devices, while also looking for survivors and trying to take back his world. You know, for some reason, when I first heard about Bastion, I assumed it was going to be a base building game, which is why I didn't give it much attention, since those games aren't really for me. But in spite of that, the thing that eventually hooked me was stumbling across a song from the soundtrack, and listening to it I was just like, my god, is this really the vibe this Terraria game is putting out?
I like this new generation of music.
The game's story is told entirely through a single narrator voiced by Logan Cunningham, whom I'm also finding out just seems to be one of the go-to voice actors that Supergiant uses in everything. Well, good, because he freaking rules. He deserves all this work. The narrator talks about everything in the world, to what's happening in the present, to the backstory, and overall the game's narrative plays out as if the narrator is telling us a story about something he experienced in the past himself.
That one was Maud, the tutor. Once taught the kid good manners. He never used them, though.
It's a really cool narrative storytelling device, and also leads to some funny moments I didn't account for, like when I spent some time busting open some scenery and the narrator actually worked that into his story.
Kid just rages for a while.
I can tell that Bastion's the type of game that'll have lots of hours put into it, whether it be from customizing your various weapons that you can pick up, upgrading your stats, finding a build that works for you, or just uncovering bits and pieces about the lore of the world. I didn't get super far into the story, but I learned just enough about it that has me hooked. I'll definitely revisit it.
You think it's true that a Tanuki's ball sack can stretch up to 10 square feet?
Okay, yeah, it's gonna be that kind of game, I guess. You ever look at a game studio and we're kind of surprised at how many games you've played for them at this point without really meaning to? Spike Chunsoft is that studio for me. I don't usually go for games for them specifically because of who they are, but I've ended up playing a lot of games for them anyway because their stuff is often really intriguing, weird, and overall fun. Stuff like the Zero Escape series, the Danganronpa series, and... actually that's it. That's all I've played from them. In a similar vein to how Supergiant games will often follow some similar beats with each entry, Spike Chunsoft games are often mysteries, which are really weird and love to educate you on specific, obscure, cryptic knowledge and get into uncomfortable sexual situations every so often.
Amazing suction! Bravo! Marvelous!
Please don't be another Ultra Despair Girls. For the love of God, please don't be another Ultra Despair Girls. AI, the Sominum Files was a game that was recommended to me by a friend that likes all those other games, so they figured I liked this one too. As far as I can tell, it's some sort of detective mystery game where you're trying to solve murders through the use of a special artificial intelligence voiced by Erica Harlacher Stone that lives in a fake eyeball that you have. But she can also just sort of pop out at times and turn into a marketable jelly creature or a cute anime girl in your dreams. Do with that what you will. I didn't get too far into the game, so I can't comment too much on the actual gameplay. The game opens up on the murder of a woman at a carousel, and the prime suspect is her biological daughter, who is also the main character's surrogate daughter / charge. Awkward. Much of the experience I had was Date poking around crime scenes and social situations while investigating a murder that we discover in the first 10 minutes, while also referencing some big, bad, horrible thing that happened 6 years ago on another case, which I'm certain isn't going to linger over our heads for the entire game as we do other things before coming back to it at the climax, and possibly interview a parrot, you don't know. I made a joke about how Spike Chunsoft games tend to fall into certain tropes, but at the same time, there is a reason I keep playing these games. Well, except for one of them. I enjoy them. Date is a bit of a pathetic single father of a man, but so far his interactions with other characters and his clear need to protect his surrogate daughter are endearing. His banter with his AI, Aiba, is enjoyable, and the voice acting in the game breathes a lot of life into all the characters. Spike Chunsoft's strengths are their stories, weird mystery plots, and their odd but lovable casts, and this game seems to have all of that so far. A good mystery is a lot of fun, and I'm eager to see exactly where this one goes when I can get back into the meat and potatoes of it, so I'll definitely check it out more later. The term Metroidvania gets used for a lot of indie games, and I feel like that's because it's a popular format and one that's really recognizable to a broad crowd. Roguelike is the other one. It's a genre that has been around for a while, and I feel like games like Binding of Isaac put some gas in the tank, and then Hades straight up floored the pedal and went 0 to 60 in the eyes of the public. So with that in mind, it only makes sense that combining these two game subgenres together will result in something amazing, right? Actually, yeah, it did make something awesome. And something I'm surprised actually came out between these two other games, apparently. Dead Cells is a game that I only knew about peripherally for a long time, mostly in that apparently an IGN writer plagiarized some guy's review of it, and also that it was some sort of Metroidvania. The first one I heard through the grapevine, the second one is because there's literally a Castlevania DLC for it. The game throws you right into the mix with a very minimalist storytelling opening. You're a green little puddle of muck that takes over a previously beheaded body, and as such you become the Beheaded. Though I don't think anyone actually calls you that in the game. Anyway, from there you have to ascend upwards through an island castle starting in the dregs of a prison before finally making your way to the throne itself to challenge the king. Why are you doing this? Whose castle is this? Who are you for that matter? Doesn't really matter, at least not right now. Just get going. Alright, I'll just go ahead and say this now. Dead Cells is the best game on this list by far, and I've already put way more hours into it than I ever intended to. I intended just to do an hour, then play maybe more next year, but this game got hooks into me quickly, and we're now looking at like 20 or so hours or more on it since I started. Holy crap. The nature of the game is addicting. The roguelike elements of it means that every run has the potential to become radically different depending on what the game deigns to give you in terms of weapons, skills, and upgrades. Or for that matter, what you personally choose to focus on upgrading as you swap weapons and skills or decide to pass them over to hold on to the equipment that you've already got. The game also goes fast, both in terms of gameplay or just runtime. So far, I've managed to get through a full run of the main game in about 20 to 25 minutes on a good day. In terms of gameplay, you're encouraged to kill enemies quickly, which will nab you a speed boost after slaughtering several in a row, and then just book it to the end of the stage so you can get a reward for clearing that stage under a certain time limit, or for killing a certain number of enemies without taking damage. And also, in true roguelike fashion, you're expected to die. A lot. Getting to the end of the game on minimal upgrades for your first few playthroughs is an accomplishment for sure, but you shouldn't feel shame if you didn't get to kill the Hand of the King on your second playthrough. Thankfully, you can pick up new blueprints to unlock, which gives new weapons to try out, or mutation perks which also change how you play, or new outfits, or much more. It's a roguelike. You alter the path you're on as you trudge forward after each defeat. The Metroidvania aspect of the game comes into play with just how the map is laid out. Each stage has a sprawling map that you dash through trying to find upgrades, weapons, and eventually the exit. But there's also permanent upgrades you can pick up that changes the way you traverse. And once you get those upgrades, the age-old mentality of the Metroidvania kicks in. Ah, I see. I no longer just tickle the muck. Tickle, tickle, tickle. I can use it for something. Time to go back to those 4 spots I couldn't get through before now and see what they were hiding. Dead Cells rules. I can't believe I didn't play this game before now. 100% recommend. Pick up on sale or buy full price. Either way, you should get it. Holy shit. So if the last game was about going as fast as possible, minimal storytelling, and is something you can easily pick up and play for about 20 minutes at a time, this next game is going to be the antithesis of all of that. To be honest, Disco Elysium probably shouldn't even be on this list. I don't have zero experience with it, technically. I've just never actually played it myself, but I know a bit about it, mainly from watching a friend of mine play it that loves it. You wake up one morning after the mother of all drunken ragers, almost naked in your hotel room as you try to piece together not only what happened last night, but who the hell you are. Yeah, you drank yourself into such an aggressive stupor that your memories are gone. Well, don't worry. The good news is that there's plenty of useful little helpers that are here to get you back on track. The bad news is that they're all within the confines of your mind. Yeah, you know, the one that you just obliterated with alcohol. Also, there's a tie that may or may not be sentient, but it's stuck on your ceiling fan, and if you're not careful, you can kill yourself in the first 5 minutes trying to get it down. Also, it turns out you're a cop, and you're here to solve a murder that took place almost half a week ago. Yep, it's that kind of game. Disco Elysium is a game that gets a lot of praise for its writing and characters, which is good because that's basically the whole bulk of the game. The dialogue choices allow you to play your character as trying to be the ideal super cop or something else. Personally, when I play games like this and there's some sort of branching morality or just ways to play your character, I tend to try and be the good character guy first. But in this game, it was way more fun to just be kind of deranged, running away from your problems, literally in some cases, or just acting like a total nutter. I get the feeling that the fun of that is going to catch up to me later, though. I mean, after all, this game is dealing with a murder case, and your all-business, all-serious partner, Kim, seems to be an incredibly patient man. But I am curious as to what his breaking point is. I'll find it, Kim. I'll do something so insane stupid that even you'll have to crack a smile. As with most RPGs on this list, I didn't get too far into Disco Elysium. I can tell it's going to be a very slow game, but I think I'll find enjoyment out of it, or maybe I'll end up being the worst cop to have ever lived, and that's how I'll have fun. But then again, that may also just be the selling point. Sometimes you play a game and after a while you're like, yeah, I think I got the hang of this. Then 5 seconds later, your hubris is checked by the all-humbling power of the universe. Then 30 minutes later, you're like, no, really, I think I got the hang of this. Then rinse and repeat ad nauseum. That's kind of my experience in a nutshell with Ghostrunner, a game that I desperately need to look up a speedrun of, but know that I will need to be wary of motion sickness I'll inevitably get from it. Ghostrunner is a first-person free-running trial-and-error type of game. You play as the Ghostrunner, some dude that's working in a dystopian future against the evil corporations of blah, blah, blah. Honestly, this is kind of one of those cases where the game has a story and characters, and I just don't think that's the reason that we're here. The reason we're here is speed and skill and broken pinky fingers. Ghostrunner feels like if the people behind Mirror's Edge teamed up with the team behind Dishonored. The objective of each stage is to get to the exit as quickly as possible while jumping off walls, dodging plasma shots from bad guys, and taking off their head with a single swing of your impossibly cool cyberpunk katana, then unlocking movement time / alteration powers that let you briefly turn the game into super hot. Mastering your small but effective moveset in Ghostrunner turns you into an unstoppable wind of destruction that flows through the arena with cat-like grace before dropping on your opponents like a jackhammer, then quickly moving on to your next victim. The problem is that you're not going to be doing all that for a while in Ghostrunner. Not because the game won't let you, but because you're just not capable as a player of it until you've died. Not until you've died a lot. Because that's the kind of game that Ghostrunner is. It's a game where you're gonna die a lot. Shit. Damn. Ow. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Ow. Mother. Okay. Alright. Seriously, that didn't count. Come on. Really? Really? What? But that's also what's so intoxicating about Ghostrunner. You're given just enough of a taste of what kind of unstoppable badass you can become at the beginning of the game, that even though you're probably going to die like 50 times in the first level, there's always a need and a want to improve, a desire to become better and to try different approaches in a stage in order to claim victory. And once you do, the air leaves your lungs and your butt cheeks unclench before you realize you're about to hit something even harder. But you're a little bit more ready now. Ghostrunner was a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to revisit. Might rebind the slow down time key though. It's set to left shift by default on the keyboard, and the way my left pinky scrunches to try and get to it was starting to give me some serious carpal tunnel by the end of the hour. Sometimes you hear about a game and you think, this sounds like something I've been wanting for a while, something very specific to my interests. I really hope it's good. And then you play it and you're just left sitting there wondering, how the hell did they mess this up? How? They had literally everything they needed to make this good and this happened. How? Gotham Knights is a co-op action game set in the ever-present DC comic setting of Gotham City, but for once, you're not playing as the golden goose of DC Comics, Batman. Instead, the story takes place after Batman has died fighting Ra's al Ghul. A pretty cool opening cutscene that you're treated to, and have to watch without any sort of gameplay for like 10 minutes. Like, seriously, it was a good scene, but the whole time I was like, you know, this could have been used as a tutorial for learning how to play the combat. But no, instead, you just have to watch the events unfold. When the story finally does shift to the playable characters, you find yourself in control of 4 of Batman's proteges: Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, and Red Hood. I mentioned earlier that Gotham Knights is a game that sounds on paper like it would have been totally up my alley, but that's because it's not hard to look at this game and see the very clear influence of the Arkham Batman games, also known as some of the greatest superhero video games of the last 15 years or so. The Arkham games were peak, and we always knew that anything DC made afterwards in the Batman setting was gonna be directly compared to them. It was just inevitable. Even then, though, something I always really liked about the Batman setting was a lot of his side characters, the Bat family in particular. Nightwing's been a favorite of mine since I was a kid, and even though he's edgy incarnate, I also always thought that Red Hood was a badass. So you put me into a game where not only I have the option of playing as those two characters, but seemingly it's also going to be an Arkham-style romp. That's exciting. That's freaking cool. I like that. And it's co-op. Like, seriously, how many times do we play games as a kid and just fantasize, man, this would be awesome if I could play this with a friend at the same time? And hey, you know, thanks to modern technology and modders, a lot of these dreams have even come true. But unfortunately, Gotham Knights isn't quite that adventure. It's something different, something strange born into a world of looter shooters, games as service, and the ever-present grind. And mind you, Gotham Knights is not a games as service. It's not like Marvel's Avengers or games like Destiny. but just playing it, you kind of get the sense that maybe at some point in development it was supposed to be. There's too many indicators and hints that feels like they're left over from that for me not to take notice. I'm glad it's not actually a live service game, but I still side-eye it a little. And even with all that, I don't know how much I actually liked Gotham Knights in my hour of playing it. I did enjoy the story, mind you, even if we've seen it a million times. I do love Gotham and the Batman setting. Getting to play as some of my favorite characters is also just fun. I just wish the combat actually felt like it had more impact when I'm hitting people. Maybe it's early and maybe I'll get better abilities and equipment later to speed things up, but it felt like I was punching water half the time. It didn't have that satisfying impact that was in the Arkham games. To say nothing of knowing that everything is going to be equipment based, which means I'll have to spend time hunting down materials and crafting to keep my damage up. And again, it all goes back to the Arkham series. Like, I understand this game wasn't made by Rocksteady, but how hard would it have been just to look at that series of games and say, okay, we're just going to do this, but with co-op. If you want to talk about another part of playing a part of history, Half-Life is a game that so many people know about and how influential it was to shooters in general, but I don't know too many people who have actually played the original game. I've enjoyed all the various media and internet culture that came from Half-Life, the memes, inspirations in other games, that Wayne radio TV series where they did an entire VR story set in the first Half-Life game.
Oh, look out, Gordon! Haunted boobs up ahead, it's big ones!
But it's not until now that I actually decided to sit down and play Half-Life, and that's mainly because Valve decided to just give it away for free to everyone for its 25th anniversary. Everyone knows this story. You play as Gordon Freeman, who is a scientist at Black Mesa, a big top-secret sciencey place that is doing some sort of big sciencey thing, and wouldn't you know it, stuff goes sideways and you open a portal to an alien dimension where those aliens start coming through and murdering everyone. You had one job, Gordon. Granted, I'm not sure what that job was, but it was your one job. Half-Life feels like a game that's in this weird place of time where we were still getting away from boomer shooters where everyone ran like an Olympic sprinter and had an enormous inventory of guns. We hadn't quite hit the Halo and Call of Duty model for generating health and a 2-gun limit. Though, even the later Half-Life games didn't adapt that. It always managed to keep its own identity. Black Mesa is a maze of a building and only gets worse now that everything has gone FOURRRR. As a result, I spent a lot of time walking around trying to find a way to the exit, as much as I did fighting head crabs and other weird creatures. The other thing about Half-Life is that I'm learning it's a staple of the series is pretty much how the entire game is just told from a first-person perspective in real time. Not just that it's a first-person shooter, but how there's no pre-rendered cutscenes where you have no control and we just have to watch things play out. From the first minute where you're riding a really long cable car ride into work, you have complete control over Gordon Freeman. That's actually why I had to forego my wait till I have control to start the clock rule in this, because otherwise 15 minutes of my hour would have been spent doing nothing. The game does hit the ground running once the shit finally hits the fan though. At that point, the story's being told as you're playing through it. Nobody stops you and says, "Gordon, these aliens are from planet whatever and they're called Nip." You run into various NPCs for sure, and some of them will even stop and help you, but everything else is just you figuring out things on your own. It was pretty cool, but also led to really unintentionally hilarious moments.
Activated. Atmospheric contaminant sensors activated. Vital sign.
I think Half-Life is a game I'd enjoy, because I did like my first hour of it. I should sit down and play more of it, and then maybe actually go through the rest of the series too, so I can be disappointed with everyone else with how it was never actually finished. I mentioned several times that I never had a PlayStation growing up, and so I missed out on specific console exclusives from it as a result, but I can't help but look at a game like Klonoa and think, okay, yeah, this absolutely would have become formative media for me in some way. Klonoa takes place in a world run by dreams, where various cute and adorable squishable creatures, oh my god, roam. Klonoa is one such cute and adorable creature, being some sort of, dog or, cats or rabbit, like a cat, dog, rabbit kind of thing. Either way, he's the cutest freaking thing I've ever seen in my life. Klonoa has a dream about an airship crashing into a mountain, and then the next day, lo and behold, it comes true. So Klonoa heads out with his best friend Hupao to figure out what's going on before he finds some dude named Gadius, his lackey, Joka.
I'm the Joker, baby!
The two of them want to turn the world into a land of nightmares, so Klonoa and Hupao set off to stop them. I don't know much how I can say about this game other than saying it is charming as all hell. It's a very strange feeling to play a game and feel nostalgia for it when you've never actually played it before, and yet that's the feeling I had the whole time with Klonoa. Despite being a game I have never played, the game's incredibly charming and simple premise was enough to captivate me immediately. There's just something great about old school platformers that don't have many gameplay mechanics in general to go off of, and yet they still find ways through the level design, enemy design, and overall just direction that keeps the game moving forward and fresh throughout the entire run. Like, you don't get crazy combos or equipment or anything else while playing Klonoa. You can run, jump, hover a little bit, and grab baddies to toss them around or use them to jump higher. That is it. You get all of that in the first level, and that is all you will ever need. That and a song in your heart. I only played an hour of the first game. I felt like skipping ahead to the sequel for another hour would have been a bit redundant, but I'm super jazzed to play more of this game and its sequel when I get around to it. A few years ago, I featured a game on my sometimes annual series, Fire Emblem February. It was a fan hack by a dude named Alfred Kaman called Midnight Sun, a fan hack of Fire Emblem Sacred Stones specifically. Overall, the game was a lot of fun. I'd say it was probably my favorite fan hack that I'd played for that year's Fire Emblem February, but there was some sad news destined for the game, a tale that was all too common with fan games. It was never finished, and the creator had no plans on doing so. It sucked, but it was understandable. Making fan games is a bit of a thankless job after all, with the amount of hours you put in for all the things that we'll never make a dime on due to copyright reasons. And yet, the man behind this game didn't just let it go. He did what I think every fan creator secretly dreams of. Alpha Kaman took the game's story and turned it into his own original game, funded through Kickstarter. I should know. I was one of the people that threw money at it. Enough to qualify for getting the game for free upon release. Sorry I haven't actually played it up until now though, guys. It's just been a busy time, but thanks for the copy. Path of the Midnight Sun is an original RPG that spawned from the Midnight Sun fan hack, created by Alfred Kaman and Studio Diamond. Sorry if I mispronounced your studio, Alfred. I already did your last name wrong in one video, so I guess it's just bound to happen. The game follows the stories of multiple characters, but primarily revolves around the conflict of a princess known as FOURRRRR that houses a powerful demon inside of her, Naruto style. The game starts off with following a point of view knight character who has mysteriously lost his memory at the start of the game, and is also traveling with his supposed long-standing best friend / possible love interest for later, Shiori. The two are on their quest to find the vassal of the Demon King, who we are then conveniently swapped over to and play as for a little while we learn what her deal is before going back. And I'm guessing that's going to be rinse and repeat for the rest of the game. I won't go too much into the story of Path of the Midnight Sun, mostly because I've mostly already covered this in a previous video. While I'm sure there will be some major differences later, it does seem that Studio Diamond has mostly been able to keep the original story of the fan game completely intact, along with the designs and personalities of their original characters. Though I do notice that they changed the spelling of FOURRRR's name so that I no longer accidentally read it as fart ass anymore. Alfred, if you're watching this, I want you to know that this was always just a juvenile joke on my part, but this was a good change for real. Combat in the game is straight up turn-based JRPG combat. Enemies come at you in two lines, and you and your party members trade attacks in a turn order before one side expires and then you go about your way. There was an interesting mechanic in the overworld with how the map works, that being that enemies can join up with each other in packs and become stronger, or you can choose to wait before proceeding at the cost of losing daylight. I imagine that choosing when to wait and when to advance will play a big part in the gameplay later. It wouldn't surprise me if some maps had Fire Emblem-style thieves that would spawn in later and try to beat you to treasure. But can't really comment on that so far, haven't gotten there yet. Again, the unfortunate side of RPGs being on this list is that those games are in it for the long haul, so you don't always get the best first impression from just playing an hour. And unfortunately, I just didn't scratch the surface of Midnight Sun yet. I want to see if they get creative with their map gimmicks and combat like they did in the original fan hack, and I'm also excited to finally see the end of the story and the vision the creator had for the original fan hack. It's exciting stuff. So regardless of whether Midnight Sun ends up being good or not, I give high praise to Alfred Kaman and Studio Diamond for getting out and completing the project they wanted to make. It's something I hope more creators of art and games set out to do. Hats off to you guys, well done. You know, it's funny that Disco Elysium is also on this list because it just so happens that the game that directly inspired it was another game I needed to play. Planescape Torment is not only an old school CRPG game, it is the old school CRPG game to my knowledge. Any modern game where you play as a guy that has to wander around a map, clicking on things, and then spend time talking with your party members who all have their own tragic but rad things going on was probably influenced by Planescape Torment in some way, even if they don't actually realize it. That and BioWare's Baldur's Gate games. Seriously, they're the berserk of CRPGs in terms of influence. And in that vein, it's kind of funny to immediately see those influences when going back and playing Planescape Torment. You're a nameless protagonist who wakes up in a place that you don't recognize with no memory of who you are, and suddenly you're beset upon by a helpful NPC that's going to help you solve this mystery. You'll do that by point and click walking around every environment that you can find, talking to every NPC that will give you the time of day, and clubbing the ones to death that don't. I've given old school CRPGs a try before, like the original Fallout, and the age and jank were usually too much for me to put up with. But unlike my experience with Fallout a few years ago, Planescape Torment was able to keep my attention a lot better. And maybe it's because I didn't immediately die to some rad scorpions after leaving the tutorial area like I did in that game, or maybe it's because, unlike Fallout, the game put its best foot forward immediately, which was its writing. Like, I won't sugarcoat it, the combat in this game is... damn. It's bad. And to my knowledge, that's also not a controversial statement. Nobody talks about how much they love the combat of Planescape Torment. They talk about the writing and the characters, and much to my enjoyment, I can see why. Like, sure, I only spent an hour with the game, but I can already tell I'm gonna love Mort, my wisecracking flaming skull sidekick voiced by Rob Paulson.
Oh sure, I'll just swing it with my arms.
I mean, I really can't think of a better time than running around as Amnesiac with Yakko at my side. Or for that matter, just the mystery of who the hell I am and what's going on. You spend the first hour of the game waking up in a mausoleum where some cult gathers bodies for their own purposes, and you have to fight your way out because dead people are supposed to be dead at that point. On your way out, you meet up with the spirit of your dead wife, who doesn't give much more answers, but does set you on your path as to what you're supposed to be doing. It was gripping narrative stuff right out the gate. Also, this is a random thing to praise, but I want to talk about how freaking cool the menu screen is. Like, this is also something I genuinely love about these old computer games. This is how visceral the menu screens feel. You bring up your menu and it feels like you're staring into the guts of an old car engine. It's really cool. Yeah, I want to stick with Planescape Torment. I'm gonna play more and probably bump the combat down to the easiest difficulty, because I don't give a shit about that. I am also curious to see if there's consequences for promising to sell my remains to a bunch of guys for 50 copper each, because, you know, I can't die permanently apparently. Seems like the ultimate grift. As we approach yet another Supergiant game on this list, I have to say this next one is probably the most unique one that I've played from their library at this point, for better or worse. Pyre is a game where we basically combine all the elements of Supergiant I've talked about so far, but also decide to make our own version of NBA Jam. You wake up in the Badlands of some world where you're found by 3 hooded figures that try to see if you have a unique ability that they all lack. One that seems to have been lost to civilization and time. The ability to read. Next thing you know, you're inducted into their gang and you're told that you have to help guide them as they try to perform some sort of rite, which is a ceremony against another group, and the way to win this rite is to pass a thing back and forth to each other while trying to run into the other team's pyre to ignite it. Doing so a certain number of times wins you the match. The rights, I mean. And then you get to go on your way. I'm late to the party on this with all the basketball jokes when it comes to Pyre, but it is still pretty funny if this seems to be the main focus of the game. I mean, I don't mean that as an insult or a bad thing. It's just funny that Supergiant has all these games built around different types of combat and violence, and only some of that translates here since you're more or less non-lethally incinerating other people on the court. I also think it's funny that one of the Supergiant tenets I mentioned is voice acting, where everyone sounds really hot, and in this game, almost everyone, except the nasally narrator during the rights, just talks in jumbled Banjo-Kazooie speak. And yet they still somehow sound hot! What the hell, man? How do they do it? The gameplay of Pyre revolves around trying to put in players that will fit your strategy best, since everyone has different parameters. Some characters are small and fast and make good runners, while others are huge and slow and make better defenders to people trying to dunk on your Pyre. Big woman! In my hour of playing, I managed to recruit one additional member to our traveling band that was able to be swapped into the right, so I'm guessing that as the game goes on, I'll slowly get more and more members of our motley crew. I'll play more of Pyre at some point. It was fun, and I'm interested to see where it's going. I think I liked it the least out of the Supergiant games that I played for this year's video, but I am still interested in it, and the art direction is still really good. I really want to see if this game has some sort of fancy equivalent of the Harlem Globetrotters, too. I can't believe we came this far down this list, and this is the first anime game that I've played for this video this year. And I say that affectionately because I feel like Bandai Namco games really do their best at capturing what it feels like to play an anime. Not just because games like God Eater, Code Vein, and Scarlet Nexus have anime-style openings, or because of the anime art style in general, though those are still very important, but also just because of the general vibe. Like, Scarlet Nexus feels like the same sort of anime plot that I've seen a dozen times. You're playing as a youthful protagonist who is part of some sort of special elite military force that's fighting back against alien creatures and defending your home that's a giant city, which I assume is taking place in a post-apocalyptic world. That was something that I found surprising about Scarlet Nexus when compared to the other anime-style games, though. There was basically no exposition info dumps in the first hour of me playing this game. You're some kind of kid with psychic powers living in the world with other kids and psychic powers, and you're fighting monsters, but you get little bits of dialogue that reveal more of your character's backstory, but so far there hasn't been a giant Star Wars style info dump of what's actually going on. It was honestly refreshing, if not also making things a little hard to talk about when it came to the plot. So the result was that I was doing a lot of stuff in the first hour, but without much knowledge as to why, aside from the general idea of wanting to be a defender of the peace. And later on, I'm sure there'll probably be some very original twist of how the government was actually fueling some sort of evil project all along, and we'll have to rebel and defeat them as some old guy turns into a giant monster based on the creatures, calling it now. Anyway, Scarlet Nexus was fun for what I played of it. The telekinetic combat was fun like it normally is in games like this. I don't know, there's just something visceral and enjoyable about ripping things out of the ground and chucking them into a bad guy at Mach 2. Control did that too, and that game was great. I'll keep playing and see how cliche we go from here. Sniper Elite 4 is the fourth game in a series I have never played. Why have I never played it? Don't know, just one of those things that always slip by me, I guess. Like a sniper bullet hitting its target. It's probably because the game is about being a sniper. I'm more of a close combat shotgun player myself. Ka-chow. I also know that this is the series where apparently you often get a mission to assassinate Hitler, and they decide to make him anatomically correct, and that he only has one testicle, which you can make explode when you shoot him in the game slow-mo, zoom in, X-ray kills. And that's basically all there is to the meat and potatoes of Sniper Elite 4. It's a stealth game where you can die to a stray wind, so you can't go full-on action hero on a map, but are instead expected to snipe in an elite fashion. 4. The map you're on has a huge area to traverse, so you can approach your target from numerous angles or methods in order to do the mission. It gave me a real Hitman vibe with going about your day, because I spent more time running around on the map trying to figure out how I wanted to kill my target rather than actually doing it in a sniper elite fashion. 4. I think I managed to find the appeal of Sniper Elite towards the end of my hour, though. I don't think you're supposed to play this game with the aspect of never raising a single alarm or freaking out anyone out by a gunshot. Mind you, I think you could play this way, but I found it was more fun with setting up in a perch and just causing a chaos as a sniper, elitely. 4. I think I went a little too hard in on trying to play the game super stealthy, which is how I normally want to play stealth games. And I wasn't trying to enjoy the actual sniping aspect more, or the elite aspect, or the 4. I think I want to spend some more time with this game. Come at it with some fresh eyes now, understanding that. 4 eyes. So as we approach the last Supergiant game on Tall Fox's "Hey, I finally got around to trying a bunch of Supergiant games" list, we approach one I actually didn't really know much about going in. In fact, I dare say it's the one I heard the least about for some weird reason. If I had to compare Transistor to any of the other Supergiant games, I'd say it reminds me the most of Bastion, but mostly just as surface level glance. You've got staples of isometric gameplay, beautiful soundtracks, and an incredibly sexy voice cast. And like Bastion, there appears to pretty much only be one voice actor who serves as the game's narrator, but this time around, they're also your boyfriend. And your sword friend.
Look, whatever you're thinking, do me a favor. Don't let me go.
God, just how? How do you do that with your voice? You're like an audible romance novel. Like, how? How is that taught? Beyond those surface level comparisons, though, Transistor is its own beast altogether. Instead of being a hack and slash game, the game is instead closer to a turn-based with pause sort of game, similar to CRPGs I've played. You enter combat and can pause for a moment while you plan out your next attack based on the number of action points you can take, and then once you execute, the game carries them out. Then you're stuck running for cover while the enemies try to kill you and you wait for another chance to attack. It was actually pretty cool once I got a handle on it. In trash mob fights, you could just spam attacks to quickly kill enemies, but in longer engagements, you had to be careful because spamming attacks might leave you in a position of vulnerability when the enemies decide to hit back. So you had to leave yourself some action points to either get away or use an ability to put you out of harm's way by the end of your attack phase. Combine that with how you can mix and match abilities that all do different things, upgrade those abilities with other powers which change the parameters of those abilities, like making something ricochet when it previously couldn't. And I can tell this game has a lot of potential to be more than just press these buttons to win every time. The world of Transistor is also beautiful and mysterious. It's this sort of cyberpunk roaring 20s setting where everything feels both fancy and bougie as hell, but you can still feel the dystopian nature bubbling underneath everything. It's a true gilded wrapper covering filth. The player character, Red, is some sort of former singer or star of some sort, and after almost being assassinated by a group called the Camerata, her lover took the blow instead and I guess had his mind transferred into this giant broadsword, which he uses to help Red fight and communicate with her. The story isn't doled out in any kind of exposition dumps. Aside from a few moments where things slow down so you can watch a cutscene from Red's past, everything else is contextual. The weapon chips you pick up are all based on people in the world. Or Maybe they literally are the people who are digitized, I'm not entirely sure. By using the chips, you get the chance to learn more about them. Just like pretty much all of Supergiant's games, Transistor is unspeakably cool. I really want to play more with this one. I think out of all the games I've played from them so far, its world and story have gripped me the most. The Witcher series is another one of those games I somehow own the entire series of, including all its DLC, and yet have never completed a single one. I tried the original Witcher, but I couldn't get too far into it, and was advised just to give it a skip. And now I think I've tried to start the second game, Assassin of Kings, like 5 times. And I don't know what it is, but I can never get much further than arriving at that one river village at the beginning. Like, seriously, I don't know what to tell you. I found the setting and characters interesting, but for some bizarre reason, I just can't finish it. Well, after deciding to give up on Witcher 2, I instead have finally decided to try Witcher 3 to see if it's any better. And I gotta say, the presentation has been good so far. The world's beautiful, the story and dialogue so far is pretty standard fantasy stuff, but still good. Actually, scratch that. I say standard, but I do like how in my first hour I met this captain from the Empire of the setting, and he's actually a pretty chill guy who actually seems to care about the commoners in the area. So that was a nice change of pace. Characters have layers. Imagine that. I can tell The Witcher 3 is going to be a huge game though, and that's why I can't really give much opinion on it here at the end. I didn't really have much opportunity to do, well, anything. I had a few bouts of combat, rode to a few places on horses, and learned a bit about what Geralt's doing, which is looking for his on-off-again girlfriend Yennefer, and probably also his on-off-again daughter, Ciri. Beyond that, the story will reveal itself as the game goes on, but I was just left with bare bones at the beginning. Also, can I just say that I never knew that the scene of Geralt in the wash tub was the first freaking scene of the game. I mean, this scene is iconic. It's the most iconic one from the game, I would say. It's referenced in the show. There's a figure of it. PC Gamer uses a thumbnail with every chance they get. And you're telling me it's the first scene of Geralt in the game? Really? Freaking wild. Anyway, all other stuff also doesn't matter. We know where the real men will spend the next 300 hours in this game. Well, that about wraps it up. Sorry I didn't put out as many videos as I used to this year, but we're still getting back in the swing of things. I am glad to be back though, and will keep making videos while I can. I really appreciate the support I've gotten since coming back, for real, you guys. You don't know how much that means to me. I really, really appreciate it. If you want more Tall Fox content though, you should go ahead and check out my Twitch channel. I try to stream on Saturday and Sunday around 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but that's subject to change from time to time, especially during the holidays. If you want updates on that, you should follow my Twitter. Also, you should know that I do actually have a second channel now, specifically for VODs from Twitch. So, if you miss a series, it should show up there eventually. So, go subscribe to that channel and check in from time to time. I could be your chill, lo-fi girl that you can study to while listening to me scream about Mass Effect or something. Anyway, thank you guys again for the great year. I'll see you next time. Until then, have a good one. Bye-bye. No, as a robot, I do not spit on things, but sometimes my synthetics do get oily, if you know what I mean. I don't know what I mean by that. That's not a sex thing. I want to be clear. I'd like to. Whoa! Oh shit! What the fuck, Shepard? Guys, help! It's taking control of me. I don't know what's going on.